Web-based client-server applications. As mentioned earlier in introduction, web-based database applications are a new type of client-server applications. Some of the traditional client-server database techniques may still be adapted. However, because of the incorporation of the web technology, there are important differences, as set out in the following table. Platform independence. Web clients are platform independent and do not require modification to be run on different operating systems. Traditional database clients, on the other hand, require extensive porting efforts to support multiple platforms. This is arguably one of the most compelling reasons for building a web-based client-server database application. Interpreted applications. Web applications are written in interpreted languages, example, HTML and Java. This has an adverse effect on performance. In many applications, however, this is a price worth paying to gain the advantage of being platform independent. Time-critical applications may not be good candidates to be implemented on the web. No need for installation. Another benefit of web database applications is that the need for installing special software is eliminated on the client side. It is pretty safe to assume that the clients have already had a web browser installed, which is the only piece of software needed for the clients to run the applications. Simple client. As a client needs just a browser to run a web-based database application, the potential complications are minimized. Common interface across applications. Again, because there is no need for specialized software, users have the benefit of using a browser for possibly different applications. Limited GUI, graphical user interface. This is one area in which web-based database applications may fall short. Highly customized application interfaces and highly interactive clients may not translate well as web applications. This is because of the HTML limitations. At the moment, HTML forms do not offer an extensive feature set. Although JavaScript language can extend the functionality of HTML-based applications, it is too complex, adds to downloading time, and degrades performance. Integrate with other applications. Because of the benefit of being platform independent, different applications that adhere to the HTML standard can be integrated without many difficulties. Multimedia support. HTML already provides easy-to-use constructs to present and manipulate multimedia contents. Non-persistent connection to database. Persistent database connections are highly efficient data channels between a client and the DBMS, and therefore are ideal for database applications. However, web-based applications do not have this benefit. Apart from the above differences, there are some other important concerns for web-based applications. Reliability of the Internet. Security. Components of a web database application. Web database applications may be created using various approaches. However, there are a number of components that will form essential building blocks for such applications. In other words, a web database application should comprise the following 4 layers, that is, components. Browser layer. Application logic layer. Database connection layer. Database layer. Browser layer. The browser is the client of a web database application, and it has 2 major functions. First, it handles the layout and display of HTML documents. Second, it executes the client-side extension functionality such as Java, JavaScript, and ActiveX, a method to extend a browser's capabilities. The 2 most popular browsers at the present are Netscape Navigator, Netscape, for short, and Microsoft Internet Explorer, IE. They have their own advantages and disadvantages with respect to web database applications. Both browsers support Java, JavaScript, and IE also supports ActiveX. Netscape is supported on numerous platforms, whereas IE runs only on Microsoft systems, example, Windows 98 and NT. IE offers compatibility with other Microsoft products and can easily be integrated with existing tools such as Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. The drawback is that IE heavily dependent on the Windows platforms and other Microsoft proprietary systems. ActiveX is designed to extend the functionality of IE and works only on Windows platforms and Macintosh System 7 Plus. Both Netscape and IE are graphical browsers. There is another browser, called Lynx, which is a text-based one. As loading graphics over the internet can be a slow and time-consuming process, database performance may be affected. If an application requires a speedy client and does not need to display graphics, then the use of Lynx may be considered. All browsers implement the HTML standard. The discussion of HTML is beyond this unit, but you need to know that it is a language used to format data or documents to be displayed on the web. Browsers are also responsible for providing forms for the collection of user input, packaging the input, and sending it to the appropriate server for processing. For example, input can include registration for site access, guestbooks, and requests for information. HTML, Java, JavaScript, or ActiveX for IE may be used to implement forms. Application Logic Layer. The application logic layer is the part of a web database application with which a developer will spend the most time. It is responsible for collecting data for a query, example, a SQL statement, preparing and sending the query to the database via the database connection layer, retrieving the results from the connection layer, formatting the data for display. Most of the application's business rules and functionality will reside in this layer. The browser client displays data as well as forms for user input. The application logic generates HTML that the browser renders. Also, it receives, processes, and stores user input that the browser sends. Database connection layer. This is the component which actually links a database to the web server. Because manual web database programming can be a daunting task, many current web database building tools offer database connectivity solutions, and they are used to simplify the connection process. The database connection layer provides a link between the application logic layer and the DBMS. Connection solutions come in many forms, such as DBMS Net Protocols, API Application Programming Interface, or class libraries and programs that are themselves database clients. Database layer. This is the place where the underlying database resides within the web database application. As we have already learned, the database is responsible for storing, retrieving, and updating data based on user requirements, and the DBMS can provide efficiency and security measures. Two-tier client-server architecture. Traditional client-server applications typically have a two-tier architecture, as illustrated in Figure 16.2. The client, Tier 1, is primarily responsible for the presentation of data to the user, and the server, Tier 2, is responsible for supplying data services to the client. Three-tier client-server architecture. In order to satisfy requirements of increasingly complex distributed database applications, a three-tier architecture was proposed to replace the two-tier one. There are three tiers in this new architecture, each of which can potentially run on a different platform. The first tier is the client, which contains user interfaces. The middle tier accommodates the application server, which provides application logic and data processing functions. The third tier contains the actual DBMS, which may run on a separate server called a database server. Database gateways. A web database gateway is a bridge between the web and a DBMS, and its objective is to provide a web-based application the ability to manipulate data stored in the database. Web database gateways link stateful systems, that is, databases, with a stateless, connectionless protocol, that is, HTTP. HTTP is a stateless protocol in the sense that Each connection is closed once the server provides a response. Thus, a web server will not normally keep any record about previous requests. This results in an important difference between a web-based client-server application and a traditional client-server application. In a web-based application, only one transaction can occur on a connection. In other words, the connection is created for a specific request from the client. In a traditional application, multiple transactions can occur on the same connection. The overhead of making the connection will only occur once, at the beginning of each database session. Client-side solutions. The client-side solutions include two types of approaches for connections: browser extensions and external applications. Browser extensions are add-ons to the Chrome web browser that enhance and augment the browser's original functionality. Server-side solutions. Server-side solutions are more widely adopted than the client-side solutions. The web server should not only host all the documents, but should also be responsible for dealing with all the requests from the client. Client-side web database programming. Major tasks of client-side web database application programming include the creation of browser extensions and the incorporation of external applications. These types of gateways take advantage of the resources of the client machine to aid server-side database access. Browser extensions. Browser extensions can be created by incorporating script language interpreters to support script languages. Example, JavaScript bytecode interpreters to support Java, and dynamic object linkers to support various plugins. JavaScript. JavaScript is a scripting language that allows programmers to create and customize applications on the Internet and intranets. On the client side, it can be used to perform simple data manipulation such as mathematical calculations and form validation. It should note that JavaScript has little to do with Java language. The only relationship between JavaScript and Java is a gateway between the former and Java applets, web applications written in Java. Live Connect. Live Connect is Netscape's bridge between client-side methods such as Java, JavaScript, and plugins. Live Connect extends the Java object model to make it accessible via JavaScript and plugins. Connection to databases. As a database gateway, JavaScript on the client side does not offer much without the aid of a complementary approach such as Java, plugins, and CGI, Common Gateway Interface, to be discussed later. For examples, if a Java applet on a page of HTML has access to a database, a programmer can write JavaScript code using Live Connect to manipulate the applet. If there is a form on the HTML document, and if an action parameter for that form refers to a CGI program that has access to a database, a programmer can write JavaScript code to manipulate the data elements within the form, and then submit it. That is, submit a kind of request to a DBMS. Performance. JavaScript can improve the performance of a web database application if it is used for client-side state management. It can eliminate the need to transfer state data repeatedly between the browser and the web server. Java applets can be manipulated by JavaScript functions to access databases. Java applets can be downloaded into a browser and executed on the client side. The browser should have the bytecode interpreter. ActiveX. ActiveX is a way to extend Microsoft IE's Internet Explorer capabilities. VPLUGINs. Plugins are dynamic link libraries, DLL, that allow data of NUYAM, IME, multipurpose Internet mail extensions to be viewed or heard. CGI, Common Gateway Interface. CGI is a protocol for allowing web browsers to communicate with web servers, such as sending data to the servers. Upon receiving the data, the web server can then pass them to a specified external program residing on the server host machine via environment variables or standard input stream. STDIN, and tell a browser what kinds of documents it is sending. The external program is called a CGI program, or CGI script. Because CGI is a protocol, not a library of functions written specifically for any particular web server, CGI programs, or scripts are language independent. As long as the program, or script conforms to the specification of the CGI protocol, it can be written in any language such as C, C++, or Java. Let us now look. The steps need to be taken in order for a CGI program to execute successfully. The user web client calls the CGI program by clicking on a link or by pressing a button. The program can also be invoked when the browser loads an HTML document, hence being able to create a dynamic web page. The browser contacts the web server, asking for permission to run the CGI program. The server checks the configuration and access files to ensure that the program exists and the client has access authorization to the program. The server prepares the environment variables and launches the program. The program executes and reads the environment variables and STDIN. The program sends the appropriate MIME headers to stdout, followed by the remainder of the output, and terminates. The server sends the data in stdout, that is, the output from the program's execution, to the browser, and closes the connection. The browser displays the information received from the server. As mentioned earlier, when preparing data for the browser to display, the CGI program has to include a header as the first line of output. It specifies how the browser should display the output. The table below shows you the header and the types of output. Primarily, there are 4 methods available for passing information from the browser to a CGI program. In this way, client's input, representing users' specific requirements, can be transmitted to the program for actions. Passing parameters on the command line. Passing environment variables to CGI programs. Passing data to CGI programs via STDIN. Using XTRPath information. Let us now look at the advantages and disadvantages of CGI. Advantages. CGI is the de facto standard for interfacing web clients and servers with external applications, and is arguably the most commonly adopted approach for interfacing web applications to data sources, such as databases. The main advantages of CGI are its simplicity, language independence, web server independence, and its wide acceptance. Disadvantages. The first notable drawback of CGI is that the communication between a client, browser, and the database server must always go through the web server in the middle. The second disadvantage of CGI is the lack of efficiency and transaction support in a CGI program. The third major shortcoming of CGI is due to the fact that the server has to generate a new process or thread for each CGI program. Last but not least, extra measures have to be taken to ensure server security. Extended CGI. An improved version of CGI, called Fast CGI, has been developed by a company named OpenMarket. Fast CGI has the following features. Language independence. Same as CGI, Fast CGI is a protocol and not dependent on any specific language. Open standard. Like CGI, Fast CGI is positioned as an open standard. It can be implemented by anyone. Independence from the web server architecture. A Fast CGI application needs not be modified when an existing web server architecture changes. Distributed computing. Fast CGI allows the web application to be run on a different machine from the web server. Multiple, extensible roles. Fast CGI can provide multiple roles such as a filter role and an authorizer role. Memory sharing. With fast CGI, different instances of the same application can access the same file from the same section of memory without duplication. Allocating processes. Fast CGI applications do not require the web server to start a new process for each application instance. Fast CGI seems to be a complete solution for web database programming, as it includes the best features of CGI and server APIs. HTTP server APIs and server modules. HTTP server, web server APIs, and modules are the server equivalent of browser extensions. The central theme of web database sites created with HTTP server APIs or modules is that the database access programs coexist with the server. They share the address space and runtime process of the server. Server vendor modules. Server modules are just prefabricated applications written in some server APIs. Developers can often purchase commercial modules to aid or replace the development of an application feature. Sometimes, the functionality required in a web database application can be found as an existing server module. Let us now look at the advantages and important issues of server APIs and modules. Having database access programs coexist with the HTTP server improves web database access by improving speed, resource sharing, and the range of functionality. Advantages. Speed. Server API programs run as dynamically loaded libraries or modules. Resource sharing. Unlike a CGI program, a server API program shares address space with other instances of itself and with the HTTP server. Range of functionality. CGI programs have access to a web transaction only at certain limited points. Important issues. Server architecture dependence. Server APIs are closely tied to the server they work with. Platform dependence. Server APIs and modules are also dependent on computing platforms. Programming language. Both Netscape servers and Microsoft web servers can be extended using a variety of programming languages and facilities. Connecting to the database. Database connection layer is built for the underlying database. Database connectivity solutions include the use of native database APIs. Native database APIs are dependent on the database they support. Database-independent APIs. The most popular standard database-independent API was pioneered by Microsoft. It is called ODBC, Open Database Connectivity, and is supported by all of the most popular databases such as Microsoft Access and Oracle. Template-driven database access packages. Template-driven database connectivity packages are offered by database vendors. Template-driven packages are very product-dependent. Third-party class libraries. Simplify web database application programming. Database API libraries. Database API libraries are at the core of every web database application and gateway. Database API libraries are collections of functions or object classes that provide source code access to databases. GUI application builders. Visual web database building tools offer an interesting development environment for creating web database applications. For developers accustomed to point-and-click application programming, these tools help speed the development process. For instance, Visual Basic or Microsoft Access developers should find such a tool intuitive and easy to use. GUI, graphical user interface, allowing developers to build a web database application with a series of mouse clicks and some textual input. These tools also offer application management so that a developer no longer needs to juggle multiple HTML documents and CGI, NSAPI, or ISAPI programs manually. Managing state and persistence in web applications. State is an abstract concept of being, which can be explained by a set of rules, facts, or truisms. A state in a database application includes a set of variables and/or other means to record who the user or client is, what tasks he or she has been doing, at what position he or she is at a particular instance in time, and many other useful pieces of information about a database session. Persistence is the capability of remembering a state and tracking state changes across different applications or different periods of time within an instance of an application or multiple instances. HTTP is connectionless, which means that once an HTTP request is sent and a response is received, the connection to the server is closed. If a connection were to be kept open between client and server, the server could at any time query the client for state information, and vice versa. URL, query string. Two basic methods offered by CGI to pass information between client and server: get method and post method. These methods can collect information for the server via a set of environment variables. By using this method together with the environment variable, query string, the server is able to find out the user's identity at login time and keep track of it thereafter. Query string works as follows. A registration or login page is delivered to the user. The user types in her username and password, and then submits the page. The username and password pair are sent to a server-side CGI program, which extracts the values from the query string environment variable. The values are checked by the server to determine whether or not the user is authenticated. If he or she is authenticated, the authenticated state is reflected in a randomly generated session ID, SID, which is stored in a database along with other necessary data to describe the state of the user session. The SID can then be stored in all URLs within HTML documents returned by the server to the client, and therefore tracking the identity of the user throughout the session. HTTP cookies. HTTP cookie is a technique that helps maintain state in web applications. A cookie is in fact a small text file containing name of the cookie, domains for which the cookie is valid, expiration time in GMT, application-specific data such as user information, etc. Cookies are sent by the server to the browser and saved to the client's disk. Whenever necessary, the server can request a desired cookie from the client. The client browser will check whether it has it. If it does, the browser will send the information stored in the cookie to the server. Important considerations. Managing state on the client. An application can maintain all of its state on the client side with any of the methods discussed in the previous section. Benefits of the client-side maintenance. An attraction of maintaining state on the client is simplicity. It is easier to keep all the data in one place, and by doing it on the client, it eliminates the need for server database programming and maintenance. Security issues in web database applications. Security risks exist in many areas of a web database application. This is because the very foundations of the Internet and web, TCP, or IP, and HTTP, are very weak with respect to securities. Security issues in web database applications include the following. Data transmission, communication between the client and the server is not accessible to anyone else, except the sender and intended receiver. Privacy. Data cannot be changed during transmission. Integrity. The receiver can be sure that the data is from the authenticated sender. Authenticity. The sender can be sure the receiver is the genuinely intended one. Non-fabrication. The sender cannot deny he or she sent it. Non-repudiation. The request from the client should not ask the server to perform illegal or unauthorized actions. The data transmitted to the client machine from the server must not be allowed to contain executables that will perform malicious actions. Proxy servers. A proxy server is a system that resides between a web browser and a web server. It intercepts all requests to the web server to determine if it can fulfill the requests itself. If not, it forwards the request to the web server. Firewalls. A firewall is a system designed to prevent unauthorized access to or from a private network, intranet. It can be implemented in either hardware, software, or both. All data entering or leaving the intranet, connected to the internet, must pass through the firewall. They are checked by the firewall system, and anything that does not meet the specified security criteria is blocked. Digital signatures. A digital signature consists of two pieces of information. A string of bits that is computed from the data message that is being signed along with the private key of the requester for the signature. The signature can be used to verify that the data is from a particular individual or organization. Digital certificates. A digital certificate is an attachment to a message used for verifying the sender's authenticity. Such a certificate is obtained from a certificate authority, CA, which must be a trustworthy organization. When a user wants to send a message, he or she can apply for a digital certificate from the CA. The CA issues an encrypted certificate containing the applicant's public key and other identification information. The CA makes its own key publicly available. Kerberos. Kerberos is a server of secured usernames and passwords. It provides one centralized security server for all data and resources on the network. Database access, login, authorization control, and other security measures are centralized on trusted Kerberos servers. The main function is to identify and validate a user. Secure Sockets Layer, SSL, and Secure HTTP, SHTTP. SSL is an encryption protocol developed by Netscape for transmitting private documents over the Internet. SHTTP is another protocol for transmitting data securely over the Internet. Java security. Java is used to write the web database application, then many security measures can be implemented within Java. 3 Java components can be utilized for security purposes. The class loader, the bytecode verifier, the security manager. ActiveX security. ActiveX security model places the responsibility for the computer's safety on the user, client. Performance issues in web database applications. Web database applications are very complex, more so than standalone or traditional client-server applications. They are a hybrid of technology, vendors, programming languages, and development techniques. List of issues concerning the application's performance. Network consistency. Client and server resources. Database performance. Content delivery. State maintenance. Client-side processing. Programming language.